All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jen Wilson, and I'm the Director of Education. Sorry, that's my old title. Director of Programming and Advocacy with New England Museum Association. And I am joined by Heather Riggs, my colleague at NEMA. And we are so excited to have you. This is the last of our series of speaker support sessions. And that means we are in the final countdown to conference. I believe we're within 40 days. So we're getting there. Sorry, Heather. So just give me a second. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to dive right into the accessibility slides and then hopefully have plenty of time at the end for any Q&A. All right, so give me that 1 second. All right, and all right, and can I get a thumbs up on if you can see that okay? Great, wonderful. All right, so welcome to Embedding Accessibility Practices in Your Conference Presentation. So first and foremost, thank you. Our conference is made up of fantastic speakers who are putting out their incredible work in the field, and we literally could not do this without you. So we so deeply appreciate the work that you're doing in the New England region and the fact that you're more than willing to share that expertise with your colleagues. This year, I think we are at about 80 to 85 sessions. We have a couple moving parts right now. So it's a huge conference. So we're getting back to those pre-COVID numbers. And I want to say last count I had, we had about 260 speakers at this year's conference. And so literally like this is amazing because of you. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for showing up over those 3 days. So for today, the game plan is we're going to go over some of the prep work. So the things that you can be doing in the next 40 or so days as you're prepping your presentation. Then we'll segue into some tips on how to deliver your content the day of. I'll share my contact information at the very end, although I'm sure you have it already. It's always just nice to have. And then we'll have some time hopefully at the end for Q&A. All right. So first and foremost, prep work. So building your presentation in advance. So what can you be doing now? So as you're thinking about if you're laying out slides, if you're hosting Q&A, so these are just some like helpful tips and some general guidelines, if you will, across a presentation realm about things that will make the absorption of your information easier. So as you're building out your slides, try to make sure that your font is at least at a 28 point and it's a nice, easy, legible font. So I would recommend if you're looking at what text you're using, if you have a bulk of text, if you have bullet points, I would rely on a sans serif like a Helvetica or an Arial. I have an example on the side over here versus a serif like a Times New Roman. Generally, I recommend that because our human eyes, it takes a little bit extra unconscious effort for us to absorb serifed fonts, especially if they're in a digital format. So if you're reading like text messages, if you're, on a tablet looking at something, if you're reading emails, that serif font, just like it just takes our brains a little bit longer to compute it. We don't even think about it. It just happens. But after 3 days of sessions, at 3 days of absorbing all this information, we want to make it as easy and streamlined for our attendees as possible. So I recommend using a clear, easy, big font. 28 for your bullet points. If you want to go larger for titles and title screens and everything, feel free. You can play with that a little bit, but those are kind of the general guidelines for the fonts. If you're thinking about color, I love color. I'm sitting in a bright blue room. I have color all over my house. So this feels very contrary to me. Think about high contrast colors of like a black and a white, a gray or ivory, and a dark purple. That's what I'm using. So sometimes we want to get really flashy and like use like bright pink and yellow, and think about those and how you can use those as like visually impactful, but don't necessarily have the background of every single screen be to be low contrast or have things be like kind of visually jarring. You can use them definitely for impact, and to highlight, but think about if you have if something like this, if you have bullet points or text you want people to read very easily and clearly, think about high contrast. You can also do a dark background and a light text. That can be really nice if you're flipping back and forth between slides, or like your title slides are in one and your text is another. But that dark background, light text scenario can be a little tough to read again and again and again. So like think about as you're stylistically laying out your format and presentation, how do you want to incorporate color and make sure that it seems and it feels very easy to read. Um, and then I always make this recommendation to avoid large amounts of red text or a yellow background. So red text can be really tough for people to read, especially if you're using red and green together. Anybody who is colorblind, that's one of the most common forms of color blindness is red and green as a combination. And then yellow can just be like really, really striking on the eye. So again, use them sparingly, use them to make some like pops here and there, maybe not like the background of every single screen. And then when you're thinking about spacing, the more space, the better. So kind of light and airy. I recommend like a 1.5 or 2 spacing between lines. If anybody is experiencing, any type of visual disability, or just like, they're starting to just like have tired eyes, that spacing allows for text to kind of, if it bleeds a little bit, to have space and to have that breathing room for folks. So again, you want to have kind of a light, airy feel to presentations. You don't want a dense wall of text. I have a slide later on that shows you that for a couple of different reasons, shows you why that can be tough. So when you're thinking about your visual formats for text, these are quick basics. And then when you're thinking about the format and the structure of your presentation, I often will recommend to people less is better. Focus on your key points that support your goal. So if you're thinking that you have 3 main takeaways for your whole presentation, consider what text you're adding in, or what visuals you're adding in, or what videos you're adding in, and do they inherently support what your objective is? If it feels like, well, I kind of just like this image and I just like it and it's fun, think about like, is it going to be the most worthwhile? Do you need to have every every word of a quote? If you do, then how do you kind of break it up a little visually, or how do you highlight what's really like the part that supports what your mission is for your presentation? At the beginning of your presentation, I'd also recommend road mapping, and that's just providing a quick outline. I pulled this, so I'm a walking tour guide in another part of my life. People love to know where they're going. So I always love to start presentations with a little agenda, a little like quick, 2, 3, 4 bullet points. It doesn't have to be a, point by point, here's what we're going to cover in the next 45 minutes, but just a quick roadmap. And that helps people on different levels. So that helps people understand if they're extensive note takers, if they want to start formatting their notes, and if they want to start understanding like how they're going to build something out. That's a great opportunity for them to kind of go like, okay, so here are my key takeaways. Here's how I'm going to kind of build stuff out. Also, humans are humans. Sometimes we just, we got to go to the bathroom. So if somebody is experiencing anything and they're like, I can make it maybe half hour, 45 minutes, and this is a 90-minute presentation, that road mapping gives them the opportunity to go like, okay, I think I can make the first 2 bullet points, then I'm going to make a quick duck out, use restroom, and then I'll head back in. So these are different. The road mapping opportunity allows people to structure their own time with you. And then as you're building your presentation, consider again, what is the point of what you're putting on? Do you really need that whole wall of text? I would say no. Or if you do, highlight it in a way that draws people's attention to the quote or the line that you really need them to see and to work with. And then also recognize that your slides are not your personal notes for you to work off of. So for people who are, especially for new presenters, I like to recommend to them, your slides are for your attendees, they're for your participants. They're there to support them and what they're learning and understanding. But I recommend this all the time, to have a personal set of notes. So it can be a printout of your slides with your kind of handwritten notes on it. Some people like to make like larger scripts with like bullet points throughout. I also recommend those personal notes, so that way, like if you're going to like forget little personal things, like I always forget to introduce myself at the beginning of presentations, you can add a little note that says like, oh, remember to do this. Thinking about those moments of like, where do you need your personal support? Those are your things. and then the slides that you're putting forward are for your audience. All right, so this is the wall of text scenario that I had mentioned earlier. So, this is pulled from our website. This is our theme for this year's conference with some supporting text from the call for proposals. And as you're probably experiencing right now, you've read this before, but it's almost as unconscious, like where does the brain go, right? Where it's like, does it start reading the text and not listening? Is it, when I'm trying to pull out keywords, some people, like I do this all the time, like, am I supposed to be writing all this down? Like I need to write down every word of the slide. So this is why I avoid this wall of text scenario, because this can be really hard. And I put this in as an example of like, we just kind of unconsciously, we don't know where our brain is supposed to go. So that's why I recommend doing more bullet points like this, clear, to the point, easily write-downable, if you will, versus this wall of text. All right. So if you are incorporating audio and visual into your presentation, some quick guidelines for you. So some of our presenters are zooming into this year's conference. We have folks who are zooming in from across the country and actually a couple of international speakers. Yay. And some speakers are also incorporating videos into presentations. If that's the case for you, please, please, please use closed captioning on any of that. So the closed captioning feature allows anybody who is deaf or hard of hearing to access what's happening on the screen. It also allows anybody who is a non-native English speaker to have that written support, because they won't necessarily have the facial cues of people as they're speaking. So for closed captioning on videos, if you're pulling something from YouTube, it's a quick button on there. For Zoom calls, you can enable a transcript. If you're having trouble with those, let me know in advance so we can work through it. And then day of, we will have AV techs who can pop into the room really quickly. So just as an FYI for folks, that we will have some support day of. But I would recommend, we have 40 days between now and conference. So in those 40 days, like just troubleshoot if this is something that you're going to be relying on at conference. If you're incorporating graphs into your presentation, make sure that they're easy to comprehend. I think we're all right now in this political time. I think we're all seeing a lot of graphs in newspapers and social media and emails, and we're seeing a lot of information. And sometimes like it's that moment of like, how do I interpret this? Right? It's not every graph is the most inherently easy to comprehend. And not also, I'll say this, not everybody is also a visual learner, and visual comprehension is not where their brain is, and that's perfectly fine. So if you are incorporating graphs, make sure it's streamlined. So again, like paring it down to the essentials of that information, that core focus of what you need people to understand. Hone in on that relevant data, and be able to, as a speaker, describe the information in 1 to 2 sentences. So if somebody isn't a visual learner, they can't see the graph, it's not working for them, perfectly fine. Just be able to say like, and in this data, we can see X, Y, and Z. So you want to just make sure that you're supporting your attendees on different levels, so that's very quick and clear, but also if they need the audio support, that they have that too. And then if you're incorporating images, great. That visual impact is wonderful. Again, make sure that they're inherently supporting your goal. So sometimes we want to like have a slide that has like 15, 16, 25 different images on it. It's kind of big, flashy, there's a lot going on. Step back and consider if that works. Is it going to make the most sense for the attendees in the room? Can you hone it down? If you have 25 images, can you hone it down to 3, 5 images? That makes it more visually clear and understandable. So if you have somebody who is blind or visually impaired, that allows them to have a larger image to work with. And also, I'll talk about descriptive text in a second. If you have somebody who, like me, I always forget my glasses and then I sit in the back of the room, those bigger images are a little bit easier to see as well. But then also, it just allows you the opportunity to describe each image adequately. So when I say descriptive text, I mean like 1 to 2 sentences that describe the appearance or function of an image. And I'll show you that on the next slide. That descriptive text allows the attendees who may not be able to access that image, who may not be able to see it easily in the moment, to start to visually in their minds, I should say in their minds, create the image or have a sense of what it is. It also means if you embed that descriptive text both in your presentation, in what you're saying, but then also in the slides itself, if you're sharing out your slides afterwards, people can use their readers on their phones or their screens to pick up that text. So it's kind of a dual purpose of using that descriptive text. So I'd recommend, if you're using images, have the 1 to 2 sentences in your script for yourself, read that out just to support people in the room, and then also use the 1 to 2 sentences in the presentation itself. So that way, if somebody is using a screen reader after the fact, they have your slides, they have downloaded them as a PDF. It's like, it's now January 2025, people are looking at your slides again, and they can't see the image, the screen reader will pick up that text. And I'll show you what that means in 1 second. So I have an image in the center of the screen. It's of a white woman with long blonde hair who is standing in a museum gallery that has 3 paintings on the walls. Her back is to the viewer. She is looking at a larger picture of bright yellow flowers. So this is 3 sentences, one's very short, 3 sentences that describes this image. And it just frames this picture so that way anybody who can't see it, can't access an image, or having difficulty with it, can start to build the mental image for themselves and have that context. I've also included it here so that way, like, I'll probably send out these slides to everybody later. If anybody is trying to read them or access them with a screen reader, it'll pick up this text. So that descriptive text is also the same as alt text, if anybody is familiar with that. If you want to use alt text in your presentation too, that's perfectly fine. I just figure for most speakers, especially if they're using descriptive text for the first time, this is the easiest avenue to go. All right, so day of. So now we're at conference. We have 800 plus people on site. We're ahead of schedule on our registration, so I think it's going to be a big, hearty conference. What do you do in the room with your attendees? First and foremost, do not make assumptions about who is in the room with you. So some disabilities are visible and others are not. So when you have 100 people in the room, you cannot make assumptions about who's in that space with you and what their needs are. Everybody brings their lived experiences with them. So we want to make sure in our presentations that we are trying to support as many people as possible and trying to make our presentations as accessible as possible. And I'll say this, these are better practices. Accessibility and support for all attendees is an ongoing practice. We're always learning, we're always evolving. So now in 2024, these are the better practices. And then next year when you're at conference again, we'll do this presentation again and it will be updated with other things as we're learning and evolving. All right, so for better practices, oh, this is my favorite part of the presentation. You will have a microphone in the room. There are at least 2 in each space. That's what I've worked out with the AV company. Please, 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 please use the microphone. This is probably one of the biggest comments that we get back in our feedback is that speakers don't use the mic. They're there for you so you can talk to everybody. We have large spaces this year. Most of our rooms can seat about 90 to 100 people, so please use the microphone. It's there for you, so that way you don't have to shout. Even if you're a loudspeaker, I'm a loudspeaker myself. Even if you're a loudspeaker, please use it. When you're using the mic, I don't have a mic at home, so I have to use my trusted spoon. You have to have it closer than you think. So our mics are going to be handheld mics. They're not lav mics. So handheld mics are, their sensitivity is not as far out as like 8 to 10 inches. Often with handheld mics, people want to have it farther out. It can feel really invasive. You have to have the mic closer to you than you think. So it's going to feel like it's almost hitting your nose. It's almost hitting your lips. You want to have it pretty close. If that feels uncomfortable, I highly recommend using a spoon. It works. But as you are speaking, people also have a tendency to float. They have the tendency to do the like, oh, I can start kind of like pulling back. Just keep reminding yourself that it has to be pretty close to you. It's going to feel like it's almost nudging you. It's uncomfortable. It's not the most pleasant experience, especially for a first-time speaker, but yeah, you got to get pretty close to it. Um, I recommend ask attendees to remind you if they can't see you or they can't hear you. You know, just at the beginning of your presentation, if like you can give everybody the like, just raise your hand if you can't hear me or see me. And it allows people to that autonomy to kind of just say like, I'm going to speak up for myself. I need you to be a little bit closer. Because sometimes people can feel like, well, I don't want to interrupt. I don't, I'm going to be very polite. Just invite them to give that little nudge. As you're speaking, I recommend talking at a comfortable, measured pace. And also, if you're a nervous speaker, sometimes as a nervous speaker, we start to speak from up here in our throat and we go really, really fast and we let nerves take over. Take a deep breath. You're going to try, if you can, to talk from a chest voice that's right in here, or a stomach voice. I come from a theater background, as you can probably tell. If that feels a little like weird and funky for you, you can YouTube tons of videos on breathing exercises and some talking exercises for presentations, or breathing and talking exercises for actors. But talking at that comfortable, measured pace allows people to articulate what you're hearing, and to understand every word that you're saying. It also allows people to take notes as you're going. Sometimes if we talk too fast and people are trying to scribble along and they can lose track of what's happening. So if this is a spot where you feel a little uncomfortable and like in your pace and your measure or where you're talking from, if you get really, really in your throat and really high and reedy, I definitely recommend, you can YouTube some videos for that. Also, let me know. I'm happy to like work with you one-on-one on and anything related to pace and breathing and such. As you're presenting, remember to face your audience and refrain from covering your mouth. So this is for a couple of different things. So if we have anybody in the audience who is lip reading, if anybody is deaf or hard of hearing and they're relying on lip reading, then you want to make sure that you're facing the audience for the majority of the presentation. Also, if anybody is a non-native English speaker, they may be relying on your face and your facial cues to help them understand what's happening. If you're learning a new language, or if language you're in a second language, then sometimes and you're not as comfortable as you want to be just yet, we rely a lot on visual cues. So remember to face your audience. You can definitely like refer to slides, you can turn and pivot, but make sure that you're not talking to the side of the room. Or if you're walking around, you get a little kinetic, you're a dynamic presenter, make sure that you're facing the audience and not necessarily the front of the room if you happen to end up at the side or in the middle. Sometimes, again, also for anybody who's a little kinetic as a presenter, remember to not block any of the captioning, or if we do have any type of interpretation in the room, to not stand in front of that person. So remember your sight lines, if you will. So you want to make sure that you are not between your audience and any type of like visual support that they may need. So that so you're not standing in front of your video or the Zoom call per se. And then I always love to do this. If you are taking questions from people, your audience may or may not have a microphone. There are two in the room. Depends on what you want to do. If you want to share the microphone out, if you have like a runner to help pass the microphone. But if you are taking questions, I always love to repeat the questions back. So one, it makes it allows everybody to hear the question and to have access to that, because I think we all have had those moments where like you hear the answer but you don't know what was asked, so you don't have that context. Also though, as the speaker, it allows you to do a check-in with the person asking the question. It allows you to say like, oh, I'm getting what you're asking, right? There's nothing more like that jarring moment when you realize that you're answering a question and it wasn't the question that was being asked, and you're like, now I have to reframe. So this just allows like a check-in for everybody, so everybody knows what's happening, everybody has that context, it's part of that road mapping. But then it also allows you that one-on-one connection of like, oh, I got you, I hear you, I know what you're asking me, and I'm going to deliver it to you. I mentioned this earlier, if you are using pictures or images in your slides, again, provide that brief description. It doesn't have to be 5 minutes. You can do, 3 sentences. It takes 10 seconds. So as you are changing slides over, just a quick like, and here's what we see on screen. Also, if you are going to play a video, just getting a brief synopsis of what's going to happen. So again, it can take, 10 seconds, 20 seconds of like, in this video, it's 3 minutes long. We're going to see X, Y, and Z. We're going to hear from this person. It allows that context for somebody who, is a note taker and they want to just like jot down like video on this. If somebody has to run out to the bathroom, it's one of those like, okay, I have 3 minutes to run out, do my thing, and come back. And I'll have a kind of a sense of like what's going to happen, but I may not be able to see it. So just that quick sense, it doesn't take too long, but it's again another nice way to support your audience. If you're asking for any type of action in the room, like, oh, if you experience this, please raise your hand. Just also describe the action. So, or describe the results. So if you're asking for like a show of hands situation, you could say like, oh, there are about 100 people in the room, half are raising their hands. Again, that allows people who may not be able to see it, the space, to understand what's happening around them. And also, if you have people who are sitting in the front and they don't want to do the pivot, they don't have to like, do the awkward, like, well, how many people are there? So it supports people in different levels. And then last but not least, if you have multiple speakers, in the Q&A, so I think we have one presentation that has it has 8 to 10 speakers in it. Just remember to state your name at the beginning of answering. So that way it allows people to understand the context from which you're answering the question. So you can say like, I would say like, oh, I'm Jen Wilson, I'm from NEMA. And that would give my perspective from a regional organization situation versus like, I'll use, we had a presentation yesterday, Amaris from Connecticut League, who's going to be working on a statewide, a state level organization. So we have different perspectives, although we're colleagues and we're presenting on the same thing. Also, it just reinforces who you are as a person. Again and again, I think at conference, we get overwhelmed with so many voices and so many perspectives. That's just a nice way to be like, oh, okay, I didn't remember who that person was. That's Jen, that's Amaris. Okay, I've got it. So. All right, and that I'm at 10:29, so we're right on time. I have a couple minutes left for a Q&A. We started a minute late, so I apologize on that. Here's my contact information. You can use either of these emails to get in touch with me. So conference@nemanet.org, that goes to the whole NEMA staff. So I'll see it, and if I don't, one of my wonderful colleagues will forward it my way. And then my personal email is jennifer.wilson@nemanet.org. This is probably the one that you have for me at this point. This is the one I keep emailing you from. And I will continue to pester you from that email. So use either of those. If you contact NEMA somehow, we're a small team. We will get it. I will get it. And we've got you covered. And we are going to segue into Q&A if anybody has any questions. Let me just stop sharing my screen so I can see all of your lovely faces. Hey, everybody. All right. Any questions?
Camille
And
had a
it can be anything.
question in the chat. Oh, yeah. Am I reading image captions and alt text out loud?
I would recommend reading the text out loud just to support people who may not see the image as clearly or just need the the visual unpacking. I'll use myself as an example. I often forget my glasses and I'm sitting in the back of the room. It's a bad habit, story of my life. And sometimes I'm back there, I'm kind of like, ooh, I can't see this as clearly as I want to, or I'm missing the nuance or the detail. So I'd recommend it. It takes 10 seconds. Hi, Betsy.
Two things. The way that this starts to fall apart is if you've got a panel of speakers and you're the session organizer. So I recommend drilling these points into your panel speakers ahead of time because you will always get the guy, the dude, who's like, I have a loud voice. And I'm like, in the moment, it's incredibly difficult. It's like you have to figure out which rudeness to use. So I would say just seriously, I've been in exactly that position, and it was somebody. It was a board member, by the way, and it's like,
oh
no, I was not pleased. And the other thing I will say is that in our speaker reminder thing, if it could also say at the end of your session, turn off the battery mic, because nothing is worse than walking into a dead mic, which was the other thing I had, and then having to organize my 7 speakers and find somebody to run around and find one of you folks who are in 7 directions, and then the IT guy, and it was just. So those are my those are my 2 things. It's like, it is an accessibility issue to turn off the stupid mic at the end of your session.
Yeah.
Because the IT guy is going to be stretched thin every time.
Yes. Yeah. This year we thankfully we have 2 and we're on 1 floor, which I'm very happy about, but I completely hear you.
Still.
And no, and we have 260 people speaking. So, you know, that's a lot of people who will need help during sessions. We have, I think at any given point, 8 or 9 sessions happening. So our 2 tech guys cannot be in 2 places at once. I wish that there are 4 places, I guess, at once. So I am planning on sending out a reminder email on Monday, and I will definitely include that because I hadn't thought of that. So thank you, Betsy.
Yeah, and if it could have the bullets that are in your thing about slides and stuff like that, and the don't make your session organizer have to tell you don't have a loud enough voice. Don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Maybe don't use those words.
I mean,
Betsy says, don't be a dick.
Thank you, Betsy. This is why I love you. You're amazing. Megan, you had raised your hand.
Yeah, I had a question about the 28-point font you mentioned. Is that Microsoft PowerPoint? Because my team noticed that on like Google Slides, that's like really, really big. Is that PowerPoint?
I would say, yeah, so I use that as PowerPoint and Canva. I would say that if it's huge, if 28 point is taking up your whole slide, obviously don't use that. But I would avoid something that's like that feels minuscule. So, you know, I think that if you're I would say anywhere between like a 28 or 36 on like a PowerPoint. So it's probably going to like convert over to like maybe a 20 or so. If you also want to send it to me in advance, if that's like no pressure, you don't have to send it to me. But if you just want a second set of eyes on it, I'm happy to take a look too. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, whatever you need. That's what I'm here for.
I know sometimes it depends upon the font you use, because I use a bunch of fonts for what I do for the program book. The size does change per font, so it depends upon the size. So I have some fonts that I have to really jack up a lot, and then other ones lower to make it all the even size. So they're different sizes, but they're all the same size. So that's something else to think about when you're looking at like the 20-point font. Is it the font or is it the 20-point?
Yeah, and that's also why I recommend something like Arial or Helvetica. So I can be a font nerd, so I apologize because I'm gonna get a little weird on this. You can also have kerning, which is the space in between letters, and that's the font design as well. So sometimes if you're using something and it's at a 28, it still looks really, really tight because like the kerning is really small and it's almost overlapping. So if you want, send it to me. I'm happy to take a look. I'm happy to happen on a call with you too. So I'm here to support you. That's my job. So that's what I love to do. So of course. And Catherine, I'm happy that that you were able to join us. Thank you so much for that. Oh, did Catherine already step out? Oh, no, there you are. Want to share some of these recommendations? Yeah, feel free. So I'm happy to send this out to you as well. So what I'm hoping to do over the next couple of days is to convert the PowerPoint into just like a tip sheet, just like a 1-pager situation. So that way you don't have to go through like 17 different slides. And then I'm happy to include you on the speaker list, Catherine, so you have that. So you're more than welcome to share that. Cool.
We'll also be putting it on the website. Just Jen will be sending out an email to Stacy's question with the links and stuff like that in the PowerPoint presentation, but I'll also be including it on the website under the About section.
Yeah.
So anybody can reference that. So it's there for future people that did not make these presentations.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? You can drop them in the chat. You can unmute yourselves. Any other pro tips too? I mean, Betsy offered pro tips, so thank you for that. All right. So if we don't have anything else, thanks, Catherine. Thanks, Betsy. If we don't have anything else, you know how to get in touch with me. I've been kind of sending emails all throughout the year. This last set of emails went out to all of our speakers that I had contact information for. That's how I'm going to be contacting everybody. So that way I'm hopefully, fingers crossed, supporting our session leaders so they are not having to do all of the work of corralling their teams. And yeah, we're about 40 days out from conference. So if you have anything, feel free to email NEMA, get in touch. I'm always happy to hop on a call, a Zoom, anything. Send me presentations if you want. I'm here for you. All right, we'll see you in Newport in just a few weeks. So looking forward to it. Thanks, folks.
Bye.